how can you factor that in though? And I know, to help people understand that, and I should you more explain these things, but going from the logical standpoint that when you say comps and comparable sales, to support, hey, what is the value doing? And it's relatively easy, I should say, if values are stable, to be able to look what sold in the last 3 months in similar neighborhood and bracket, right, the lower and higher. Am I using that word right? Bracket the subject property. But when we see that, that's easy, right? And you can pull up the comps that have sold recently, relatively recently. I get this will be interesting as we go on through the year, how recently some of these sales will be. But how then mathematically can you... That puts a lot of weight on you to try and say like, oh, based on, is there some type of standardization on the equation? I'm saying how long did the property sit? How many offers are in? Because you were trying to do that the other direction, right? And saying, okay, the last house sold for $50,000 less, but that was a month ago, and now they got 10 offers, right? How do you do that?
So the best way, or I would say, how I feel is the best way to kind of look at the scenario is always using the most recent comps. Because that's what's happening in more recent time than what happened even 2 and 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So you look at your most recent sales. You look at mathematical statistics of what's happening in the neighborhood. So, there was a time where I was looking year over year, this year versus last year. Increase. And we were seeing these huge increases, 20% in a neighborhood, so year over year.
Yeah.
And now, I'm like, okay, well, I have to kind of change the data I'm looking at to maybe not go year over year. We're going 6 months to 6 months. And that's where you're seeing stabilization, because still year over year, probably showing a bit of an increase. But once you get into these shorter time frames of what's happening right now, so again, most recent comps, most recent months, then you're really starting to kind of see like, oh, things that have stabilized. I wouldn't go as far as to say that I've seen a real decline yet. But when you do start seeing that, then, you're looking at basically, it's basically called a time adjustment. So, what happened 3 months ago, 6 months ago, we're seeing this rate of decline, and then you apply a mathematical adjustment basically to say, this house that sold 6 months ago wouldn't have sold for that now. So I'm going to do a rate of decline, and you basically apply an adjustment for time.
Yeah.
And so it works in the opposite when things are going up. If you're using a comp that's 6 months old, maybe you're using it because it has very specific things that bracket.
Yep.
It has the same location, or it's the same size, or and so if that sold 6 months ago and we've increased, you're taking this rate of increase that you can prove. And I think right now the hardest thing is we all kind of can feel this shift in the market, but mathematically it's a little hard still to apply a number, So that's where you're looking at the most recent sales. And then the other thing that appraisers do is when you are coming up with that final opinion of value, you have, 4 or 5 comps in a report, you've adjusted them all out, and you have these adjusted sale prices. Then you're coming up with that opinion of value that should fall in between those prices. So that's kind of your range. And then you are giving it a weighted value. Yeah. So again, as an appraiser, looking at all these things, like how long have the houses sat on the market, like what's kind of happening with these statistics, then you can kind of, the methodology for me is to give the most weight to the properties and the comps that I feel best reflect what's happening now. So then you can kind of say, well, whether that was because it was the most recent sale, because it's the most similar property, or maybe I use a combination of that and I say, well, I'm going to give most weight to these two because this one's super recent, this one's the most similar house, and then that's where I kind of come up with my final opinion of value. So it really is kind of just making sure that you're attuned to, well, this house is the most similar, so I'm going to go give most weight to that because that's what I always do.
Yeah.
It's trying not to get stuck in that. This is what I always do. Maybe there was a time where it was, the most similar house. Now it's the most recent activity, and that's where you're going to shift kind of your thinking. And and make your opinion of value kind of fall more in line with that.